Demon Slayer Infinity Castle has passed 600 million worldwide, tracking to become one of the top 5 highest grossing movies of 2025 so far. Demon Slayer Infinity Castle is crossing the 600 million mark at the global box office this weekend, the first anime to ever surpass this mark. Global box office breakdown per country updated tomorrow. A Japanese anime movie is going to make more than Superman in any Marvel movie this year. Crazy. And now we have the actual numbers. And this was hours upon hours ago. Infinity Castle has reached 616 million, while Superman is at 615 million. This is a monumental moment. Not just for Demon Slayer, but anime. This is a complete rejection of Hollywood's movies. This is a complete rejection on how the West handles just media in general. Because you're not going to tell me, if you were paying attention this last summer, about how much conversation was around, let's say, Fantastic Four or even Superman. I definitely saw a lot of people talking about Superman in a positive way. And the fact that you have an anime movie, regardless if we know it's very popular in Japan or not, but you have an anime coming into theaters around the world globally, and it's surpassing something like Superman is pretty huge. Especially since, from my understanding, everybody really loved the Superman movie. So that's the big point here, is that you have a series that is relatively new in the grand scheme of things. Like, when you compare it to, like, something like Superman, a massive monumental franchise, a monumental icon, getting surpassed by a series that is relatively new in the last decade is pretty crazy. But it doesn't just stop there. We need to look at the cold hard facts here on what this actually means. What this moment means for Demon Slayer and anime. But we need to look at this graph here, and you can see that just the overall progression at the box office that Demon Slayer had over these weeks. And when you get to week 8, you can just see the radical jump. It just goes straight up, basically, and it starts surpassing everything that was in the top 10 or top 5 of the box office this year. Like, for instance, instantly you see Fantastic Four was just surpassed, and then it surpasses a few others, and then, once again, this was made earlier today, not even counting for the new stuff. For instance, it now surpassing Superman, but it is now above Superman, and it's getting closer and closer to How to Train Your Dragon. And so let's look at the actual box office films of this year. So at this time, we got to look at this, because the data is a little bit outdated, as you can see here, because it always says 605 million, but we got to look at the data here. So Fantastic Four, it box office at 521 million. Still pretty impressive, but we got to take a look at the actual budget of this film. If you scroll down and look at the budget is $200+ million. So we don't have an exact amount, but it made, I would assume the movie made even. I could be wrong there, correct me if I'm wrong, but the movie more or less made even. But then we go into the next one. We have Mission Impossible. It also was around 598 million, and we got to look at its overall budget here. If you scroll down, you'll see the budget is around 300 to 400 million mark. That is definitely not good, especially with how much money was poured into this movie. Not a lot of profit, honestly, for that. But then we go even further up. We actually see Demon Slayer here. Once again, these numbers are a little bit inaccurate, because now it's at apparently 617 million, surpassing Superman. So, yeah, that's a pretty big deal. But anyways, we gotta look at Superman's budget before I look at Demon Slayer's budget, because I think this is a pretty big deal to actually look at. So, if you look at Superman, the movie's budget was 225 million. To make this movie, okay? And from everything I heard from this last summer, a lot of people agreed it was a good movie. Now, there's probably going to be some that disliked the movie or didn't like certain things about it, but overall, I heard a lot of positivity around it. And so, when you look at this budget, it more or less, it made some money back, but it wasn't, like, from my understanding, this isn't an overwhelming home run success, but it is, you know, they did make, you know, even, or at least a little bit over even, to my understanding. Now, we go to Demon Slayer. And when you look at Demon Slayer's budget, this is how much it cost to make the movie. 20 million. And they are now sitting over 600 million. That is legitimately like $600 million profit if we're calculating the 617 million they made, or probably even more now today. So probably we're looking at like 620 million that the movie has gained. So if we subtract the 20 million from it, they have made 600 million profit. They have made way over even, breaking even with paying people. They have quadrupled their money. They have done even more than that. And as I said at the beginning of this video, this is a complete rejection of Hollywood. This is a complete rejection on what Hollywood has been doing for these last few years when it comes to making movies, but also stories that they have been telling. So what do I mean by that statement? Well, one of the big reasons why I'm saying stuff like that is because, let's be honest. Hollywood has been in a spiral, a downward spiral, where a lot of people just don't want to go to the theaters anymore. And this has been a big hot topic as of late for the last few years, that people just don't want to go to cinema. They don't want to go to theaters and watch a movie. And it's very clear if you look at the numbers and stuff, that box office and, ticket sales and stuff have been slowly going down over the years. People would rather just sit at home and stream their movies and stuff than go to a theaters. Now, there is exceptions to this. There is movies that break out and all that, and Demon Slayer is probably one of those cases. But the point is that there has been an ongoing trend that a lot of people just do not like some movies that's coming out in Hollywood nowadays, especially in the West. And a lot of these comic movies and different things like that, people just, they're growing bored with them. There seems to be some fatigue, so to speak. There is always this conversation of fatigue with superhero movies or supervillain movies and stuff like that. And it's very clear that the audiences are growing tired of that. They're growing tired of the same format over and over. And so when you look at Demon Slayer, and now that on the charts it is rivaling stuff like Superman, it's massive. That is actually insane for a few reasons. Because, for one, a lot of movies that are created nowadays are getting out of hand when it comes to their budget. Their budget is astronomically high, to the point to where, they have to make quadruple the amount of what they invest in it just to be able to break even, or even make some bit of profit back. Which is pretty bad. Just legitimately, that is not good whatsoever. And the fact that you have a movie like Demon Slayer, well, if you're an anime fan, you know it didn't technically come out of nowhere, but if you're someone that doesn't really involve yourself in the anime and manga community, you're gonna look at Demon Slayer and you're gonna be like, holy crap, this movie was made for $20 million, and it straight up is making over $600 million in profit. That's insane. That is insane. Now, there is a lot of good and a lot of bad about this. First off, let's talk about the good, okay, before I get into the nasty. First off, I'm happy for Studio Ufotable. I'm happy that Studio Ufotable was able to, get this amount of recognition, be able to make this amount of profit, because regardless of how the future, whatever happens in the future, thanks to these circumstances, I am very happy that the work of Studio Ufotable and the staff and everyone involved is getting recognized, that they are getting paid, and that they are getting showcased that to around the world, that they have made quite a masterpiece, that people deem it a masterpiece, and that something like this is even rivaling a massive title like Superman. That's a big deal, and I'm very happy for everyone involved that worked on this project. Now, another thing I do want to say is I do think that it's interesting that the same studio that was getting into trouble for tax evasion, by the way, yeah, if you don't know that, I'll put an article on screen, you can look at it for yourself, but yeah, Studio Ufotable, the animators of Demon Slayer, they got into some tax issues a few years back, and the fact that this is the same studio that is now making over $600 million in profit, it's just, there's some irony there, there's some funniness there, that definitely should be talked about, but the point is that Studio Ufotable's come a long way, and they've always been a fantastic animation studio. As someone that's been watching their stuff for over a decade, I mean, watching them from Fate Zero to Karno Kyoukai and stuff like that, and Fate Stay Night, and then eventually to Demon Slayer, their evolution as a studio has been gradual, but understandable why they eventually reached this point. Because anyone that watched their original films, I'm not talking about Heaven's Feel and stuff from Fate, but Karno Kyoukai, for instance, you'll know Studio Ufotable has just always been a hands-down amazing company in terms of what they make. When it comes to their animation art department, it's insane. It's actually mind-blowing how good they are. Even if you go back early on in the 2010s and 2000s and stuff, their stuff is crazy. And I've always thought if there was a movie that eventually was animated well enough and it was a big enough series, they would explode in the box office. I always had that feeling, and that's exactly what has happened. Demon Slayer really is an example of that it is one of those series that just had everything at the right time work for it, and that is why it's so successful. Now, we need to talk about the bad. Now, I hate being a doomer and being, upset about this, but there is obviously inherent issues with this movie doing so well. I don't want to take away from the fact of the success of the movie, But the issue I think that this is going to lead to is that a lot of people in Hollywood, these companies, Warner Brothers, Paramount, Disney, you know, all these different companies like Universal, they're going to look at Demon Slayer and they're going to be like, okay, how does this movie look so good? And it is literally a fraction of what our movies cost. Like, for instance, Demon Slayer's $20 million. And you know what? Let's take a look at How to Train Your Dragon is. How much is this budget here? How to Train Your Dragon is $150 million in budget. Obviously, it's made a lot of profit back. But, that's a big but here. The fact is that Demon Slayer is only $20 million. And it looks that incredible. I think a lot of people in Hollywood are going to take a look at this, and they're going to be like, how can we replicate the budget and this amount of profit? And I think they're going to, there's a few things that's going to happen. You're going to have these companies start investing in Japanese studios or Japanese animation and stuff to try to make their own anime. That's 100% what's probably going to happen. But another aspect of this is that they're going to partner up with these studios and companies to make some profit. And besides obviously maybe activism and politics being poured into it, the big issue is that it's going to cause the animator issue to get even worse. And if you don't know what I'm talking about like how animators are overworked, not paid enough, and they fall asleep at their desk and stuff. It's a huge issue. I feel like with how little budget was poured into the movie, it's going to make that issue already with animators much worse, because they're going to think that the normal pay that animators are getting paid right now is A-okay, completely fine to basically overwork everyone to be able to get something out. They're going to think that's A-okay, and so they're going to be pretty much more or less like sweatshopping a bunch of animators to get different shows that look like Demon Slayer out, but for the same amount of profit, or maybe even less. And I think that is a very bad thing. I think that's exactly what's going to happen, and I sense that in the future. Because you know for a fact these companies, when they operate, they're not looking at ways to pay animators and people more. They're looking at ways they can save profit, save money. And in this case, that's exactly what's going to happen. And the fact that it's already been proven now that a movie could come out like this for a fraction of the cost, they're going to try to replicate it. It's pretty much the equivalent of what Silk Song has done. Like, when you look at Silk Song, or Hollow Knight, or Expedition 33 in the gaming space, that's pretty much what Demon Slayer has now done to Hollywood. What they have done to Western media. Because it is a complete rejection of everything, but I feel like there is going to be symptoms that's going to lead it to be not good. But we'll see. We will see where the future holds. But regardless, insane feat. Regardless of the negativity, I am happy for Demon Slayer. I'm happy for the staff. I'm happy for what they've done. It is an insane feat that is not something that you can really take away. It is a record that is going to probably take a while to beat. Good on Demon Slayer. I think the only thing that probably could beat this record now for an anime film would probably be Demon Slayer Infinity Castle Part 2. I honestly think that is the only way at this point this record's going to be beaten. Because when you think about it, this is the first movie. It's going to be a trilogy, by the way. And if it's already netting this much profit on the first movie, imagine the second. Imagine the finale. Like, oh my goodness. I would not be surprised when the third movie comes out and makes over $1 billion, or close to $1 billion in budget. Like, if we look at, like, the films here, I would not be surprised if it rivals something like these statistics with Lilo and Stitch or Neja. I would not be surprised. Well, I don't know if it'll reach Neja level. That's crazy profit. I haven't even seen that movie, but that's crazy profit. But I do think that it would rival and probably go beyond the Minecraft movie and Lilo and Stitch. And if it is even able or capable of surpassing the Minecraft movie, you realize how insane that is? Because Minecraft is a cultural phenomenon as well. It is. It really is. And if it is able to, eventually one of their movies is able to surpass that, I don't even know what I would say. I'm going to have to think on what I would even say to something like that. But I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe, do leave a like, and leave a comment as well. Helps with your algorithm. I don't know why I was stirring my words there. Need some water. But anyways, love you guys. Chibi out.